Today we are starting our chapter 10, and we're going to be looking at some stats, some ways to make problems easier to describe. So it's kind of a piecemeal chapter that we're going to be looking at. Today our focus is going to be looking at frequency tables and how to read them and how to get more data out of them. So let's go ahead and jump on in. So for our first portion here, for our frequency table, let's go ahead and title. We're going to go ahead and look at some data that I got from my classroom last year. So the definition of a frequency table is simply a table that shows how often an item occurs. So a table that shows how often an item occurs. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at some data. We're going to go ahead and make a table. We're going to have kind of a thin column. We're going to split the remaining into two. We're going to have kind of a title area, and then we're going to split what's remaining in two as well. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and look at pizza versus burritos. Okay. And we are going to take a look at a survey of people who were adults or 18 and over or teens. So we're going to go ahead and look at adults versus teens. Okay. Now, as we took this survey, this is the data that we got. So we're going to go ahead and write in that data. So the number of adults that preferred pizza was 3, and the number of adults that preferred burritos were 7. The number of teens that preferred pizza were 9, and the number of teens that preferred burritos was also 9. Okay. So this is our raw data. This is simply the answers to a survey. This is the question in the room, do you prefer pizza or burritos? And these are our results. So in order to go ahead and analyze this information, the first step is to add our columns down. So we're going to go ahead and add this way. And we know that 9 plus 3 is 12. And we know 9 plus 7 is 16. Okay. Step number 2 is add your rows across. So we're going to go ahead and add going this direction. 3 plus 7 is 10, and 9 plus 9 is 18. Okay, the third step is find the total number of participants, the number of answers in your survey. We're going to kind of call this the magic number. So we're going to add this way down and this way across of our totals, and those will always be the same unless you made a calculation error. And so 10 plus 18 is 28, as well as 12 and 16. So once we have this raw data, we're ready to go ahead and answer some questions. So as always, when we change our raw data, we tend to want to turn it into a percentage, a number out of 100. And that way we can get a raw deal. When I tell you, oh yeah, 3 out of 28 people said this, you're like, oh, that's interesting. But if I tell you that 14%, our brain is able to read numbers out of 100 or percentages a little bit easier. So our first question is the percent of adults who prefer pizza. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and take a look at our pizza number, and that's going to be our numerator. So our numerator is going to be the answer to the question. So the question is the number of adults who prefer pizza. So we look at this part of the column, and we see that 3 preferred pizza. Our denominator is going to be the total number in the survey, how many people answered the question. And so that, of course, is going to be this bottom total number. So 3 out of 28. Okay, we're now going to go ahead and grab our calculator, and we are going to turn that into a decimal to start with. So we start with 3 divided by 28, and that is 0.107. And this is actually not the percentage of adults. Let me correct that. This is the percent of our total. So percent of people who prefer pizza. We'll do that next one next. So now that we have this as a decimal, we are going to turn it into a percentage by moving our decimal point 2 to the right. And we're going to round to the nearest tenth. And so we have 10.7% of everyone prefers pizza. People who are adults that prefer pizza is 10.7% of our questionnaire. Okay, question number 2. Let's go ahead and do that other one that we were setting up. The percent of adults who prefer pizza. Now, we still have our 3 for our numerator. However, we're only looking at adults. So this is the number that we're looking at right here, which is 3 out of 10. 3 divided by 10 is 0.3. We're going to move that 2 to the right. And so we have 30% of the adults prefer pizza. Okay, let's go ahead and look at a third question. The percent of teens in the survey. So our answer is how many teens are in the survey, and so that's 18 out of the total number of people in the survey, which is 28. So you have to be careful, as you can see, if words get a little confusing as you're working on here. So you just have to be careful that your numbers are reading which people you are getting for your answer and which people you are getting for your denominator as well. So we have 18 divided by 28, and that is 0.6428. We're going to move our decimal point 2 to the right. And we have 64 point, and we're going to round that to the nearest tenth. 64.3% of people in the survey were teens. We had more people in the survey who were teens than were adults. Okay, so that is a frequency table and how to kind of read it. We have a second type of frequency table called a relative frequency table. And our relative frequency table is simply a table converted to percentages. And so this is all of them converted to percentages. So we're going to take the same data and then we're going to go ahead and redo it converted. So let's go ahead and take our table once again. Same setup as before. Kind of had skinny going up the side and the top. We cut that one remaining in half and that one in half. We have our same titles going on. We have adults and teens, pizza, and burritos. Okay, now what we're going to do for each of these is we're going to take each of our original answers and we're going to write it out of the number of total people in the survey. So for our first one here, we had 3 out of 28. Okay, so we already have that math right here. So that's going to be 10.7%. Okay, for burritos, we have 7 out of 28. So we have 7 out of 28, and then we're going to round that. So that is going to be a 25%. For teens that prefer pizza, we have 9 out of 28. So we're going to go 9 divided by 28 and then change that to a decimal. So we have 32.1%. And we also have teens that prefer burritos, 9 out of 28 people in the survey. And that is also going to be 32.1%. Okay, so let's go ahead and write down exactly what we did there to make that happen. Step 1, we have our raw data number divided by the total number in the survey. Step number 2, convert to a percent. That's moving your decimal 2 to the right. And step number 3, check to verify all adds to 100%, because we should have 100% of people in that survey. So we're going to go ahead and add those going across and add those going down. So we have 10.7 plus 25, and we have 35.7% of adults in the survey. And then we have 32.1 plus 32.1. There we go. And that gives us 64.2%. And then going down, when we have the percent of people who prefer pizza, 10.7 plus 32.1 gives us 42.8%. And then our 25, let's get that correct. Trying to get a good angle for you guys on my calculator. 25 plus 32.1 tells me that 57.1% prefer burritos. Now we're going to kind of do that magic number again. Now you'll notice something interesting is happening here. When I add 35.7 plus 64.2, I don't get 100%. I get 99.9. And going my other direction, 42.8 plus 57.1, I also get 99.9. Now, that's because we rounded to the nearest tenth. The further out we round, the more that's going to be accurate. So if you get something in the 99 to 101%, because we rounded, that's going to be okay. Sometimes if we have nice, pretty numbers, it's going to be exactly 99%. Now, what does this mean? We want to be able to read our columns and our rows. Looking at this, that means that going this direction, 35% of people in my survey were adults. So we're going to go ahead and kind of write these pieces of information down. So this is what we're able to get from this table. 35.7% of survey takers were adults. Same for our second one, for 64.2% of survey takers were teens. Okay. Now, what do you think these column ones mean going down? This is the people in the survey who preferred pizza and the people in the survey that prefer burritos. So we have for our going down in our columns, we have 42.8% of survey takers prefer pizza. And we have 57.1% of survey takers prefer burritos. Okay, so as we're looking at our two types of tables, our frequency tables versus our relative frequency table, you can see the difference. We have just raw data here, but our raw data allows us to get a little bit of different information. If I were to ask the percentage of teens that prefer pizza, I'm able to take that there are 9 out of 18, which is 50% of teens. So as we're looking at this information, I can go ahead and get a little bit different facts. So if I wanted to find out of the people who prefer pizza, what percent are adults, I would be able to say 3 out of 12, which gives me 25% of pizza lovers were adults. 75% of pizza lovers, 9 out of 12, were teens. So I have that ability to get that information that I can't get from my relative frequency table. My relative frequency table is only comparing everything to the whole. So I'm able to, with my raw data, ask some different questions that I'm able to answer with my relative frequency table, which is already converted from that raw data into percentages. Okay, we're going to have some Khan Academies this week that also walk us through questions, and it's really important to kind of take that thought of what exactly you're answering and what you're asking before you decide which numbers to use your percentage. So this is a very reading heavy type of questions. It's like word problems, and we like these because those are the type of questions that are interesting, that allow us to find more information out about the world. Let's go ahead and get some work done on our Desmos activity.